Yeah, these messages are clearly doctored, is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why they're doing that. Tyler's being forthcoming. We're protecting him in some capacity. I find that to be unacceptable. Okay? Unacceptable. I want every single text message. I want timestamps. It is conspicuous that you are not telling us when this was sent, because it sounds like it's when the campus is on lockdown and he's got to go back and he's got to clean up. And then all of a sudden we're in the next day when his dad is getting clued in after the picture's been released. They're not telling us that, okay? And you have a right to be a little bit uncomfortable about that, because I'm a lot of bit uncomfortable about that. We need full answers today. Well, it has been going viral. A mere minutes after Charlie Kirk is shot, there are two men that look rather mysterious. They appear, they move his chair, and they take down the camera that's directly, or was directly, behind his head, or the camera rather, that is just above Charlie's head. That's the camera that I'm talking about on the right-hand side. That's a camera.
Safety team is here. I just heard them say the active shooter, Charlie Kirk, has been shot. Charlie Kirk got hit, is what the security detail just said.
Candace Owens is not letting the FBI breathe easy. From the jump, she's been pointing at the cracks in their story about Charlie Kirk's death, and the very first crack she spotted was in the text messages. The FBI rolled those messages out like they were the smoking. They said, "Here's the suspect's motive. Here's proof he planned it." But when people actually looked closer, especially Candace, something was off. Whole chunks of the conversation were missing. Timestamps didn't line up. You'd read one message and then the next one would skip hours with no sign of what happened in between. Candace asked the obvious question. If this was really a full transcript, why are the times broken up like that? Where are the gaps? And why would an agency as big as the FBI present a cut-and-paste job as the truth? To her, it didn't just look sloppy, it looked tampered with. And here's why that matters. Those texts weren't just side evidence. They were supposed to show why Tyler Robinson pulled the trigger. They were the Bureau's way of tying motive to the autopsy report, painting a full picture. Here's what he was thinking, and here's the damage he caused. But if the texts are broken, the picture isn't full anymore. It's edited, which means the autopsy, instead of being solid proof, now looks like just another piece in a shaky puzzle. Candace said it plain. If the FBI can't get time right, how can we trust them on cause of death? And that's the hook that caught the streets. People don't need to be experts in ballistics or medical reports to understand missing time. If you show someone a text chain with holes, they know something's wrong. And once that trust is gone, everything else, including the official autopsy, starts to look like part of the cover-up. And it's also about timing, in a bigger sense. Candace reminded her audience, this is post-Peen America. People don't trust institutions anymore. We've seen cases wrapped up too neatly, files sealed too fast, questions brushed off like they don't matter. So when the FBI says case closed, but their own evidence looks cut up, folks lean toward suspicion.
But this was the plan, okay? This was the plan. And we have to stand up to this, guys. We have to fight this tooth and nail. The reason they're doing this, obviously, is because they can't win in the free markets. People are, as Megan said, people that are under 30 are anti-Israel. So that means the future of America is anti-Israel.
The FBI wants this case to look clean. They dropped the autopsy report and acted like that was the final word. Charlie Kirk's wounds confirmed. Suspect charged. Case closed. Mainstream media backed them up, repeating the same line. Tragic, but solved. But Candace Owens isn't buying it. She says the autopsy can't be trusted when the FBI is already caught cutting corners. And she didn't just stop at the missing times. She brought up what she calls Cameragate, the strange story of two men caught on video inside the building on the night Charlie was. According to Candace, these men weren't just bystanders. They were moving Charlie's chair. They were seen pulling the SD card from the security camera. And here's the kicker. Instead of arresting them, the FBI let them walk. The footage disappeared and the official reports never mentioned their names. To Candace, that looked like a deliberate cover-up. If the Bureau was serious about solving the case, why erase the very evidence that could show what happened? So now there are two competing spins. The FBI's spin. The autopsy proves their story. Charlie was by Tyler Robinson. End of discussion. They point to ballistics, the wound, and the timeline they presented. They want people to see the autopsy as the final word. And Candace's spin. The autopsy is only as good as the evidence around it, and the evidence is already compromised. She points to the broken texts and Cameragate as proof the FBI can't be trusted. If they'll hide the timestamps, if they'll delete video, what makes the autopsy any different? The public is split down the middle. On social media, one group says Candace is reckless, accusing her of chasing clout off a tragedy, but the other group sees her as the only one willing to call out obvious gaps. They share screenshots of the missing time. They circulate her clips about and they ask why mainstream outlets are ignoring those details. And that's the problem for the FBI. Their clean narrative only works if people believe them. But once someone like Candace points out missing texts and deleted footage, the autopsy doesn't feel like proof anymore. It feels like spin. So the question is, did the autopsy confirm what happened, or was it rolled out as a shield to cover up what the FBI doesn't want us to see?
So I'm sure you guys remember seeing this video of George Zinn, the 71-year-old man who claimed that he was the one who shot Charlie Kirk right after it happened to law enforcement agents, saying, quote, him now me, end quote. He was arrested on site with the viral footage showing officers dragging him away as his pants was falling down. During questioning, Zinn admitted that he had no involvement in the actual but claimed that he made the false confession to, quote, draw attention from the real end quote, and allow them to escape. Now, prosecutors have stated that this delayed the investigation and diverted critical resources, but ultimately Zinn was charged with obstruction of justice, which is a second-degree felony.
If this FBI case already feels shaky, that's because the early handling was a mess from the start. Candace Owens loves pointing back to those first chaotic days to show a pattern. Not just mistakes, but habits. And take George Zinn. Remember him? A man who suddenly stepped forward, claiming he was the killer. The press ran with it. Headlines screamed confession. But days later, it fell apart and he had nothing to do with Charlie Cook's death. Instead of clarifying, the FBI let the false lead hang in the air long enough to muddy the waters. To Candace, that wasn't just sloppy. It looked like intentional confusion. Then there was Governor Spencer Cox. At his press conference, he contradicted himself about what the suspect, Tyler Robinson, was even wearing the night of the first. It was one outfit, then another. Candace pointed out how that kind of inconsistency isn't a small detail. It shakes confidence in the whole identification process. If they can't get the outfit right, how do we trust their bigger claims? And then came the ballistics oddities. According to Candace, the FBI said they were still looking for a bullet, but the autopsy didn't line up with that. One wound didn't even bleed the way it should have. And the reports raised questions about whether the bullet the Bureau claimed to be chasing even existed. It's like they were building a story and then scrambling to make the evidence fit afterward. When you put these pieces together, a pattern emerges. First, a false confession, then a governor tripping over his words, then an autopsy that raises more questions than answers. And on top of it all, those Dr. L-looking text messages and missing security footage. Candace keeps repeating, this isn't a single blunder. It's the FBI's playbook. She even tied it back to their past scandals. Post-pan, every case closed that later turned out to be riddled with lies. The FBI has a reputation for sealing reports, cherry-picking what the public sees, and calling it truth. So, when they roll out Charlie Kirk's autopsy like it's the end of the story, Candace says people have every reason to be skeptical. Context matters. This isn't just one case, gone messy. It's another chapter in a long history of the FBI asking for blind trust and getting caught with shaky receipts.
Pretty casually mentioned to you guys something, that the doorbell cam footage, which TMZ happened upon somehow, was from a street upon which a ton of employees that work for Caldera Engineering live. We showed you, I think, one or two of those employees, the husband and wife I had mentioned worked for Caldera Engineering, and it is a country that purports to manufacture valves. And I said this, I said, I know nothing about the valve industry. All I know is that every time I start investigating a government conspiracy or looking into people that are really shady, like Harley Pasternak, thus far 3 people who I've investigated who oddly, either them or their families had backgrounds working in this very niche valve and piping industry, like manufacturers of valves and pipes. I'm like, is everybody doing